Hi, my name's Darren, and I am excited to have a conversation with Pearl.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Sorenza again with Women's Successful Living, and we're on for another Conversations with Pearl. And today is different because we actually have a gentleman joining us today. And
Gentlemen, I love it.
so Darren Burgfeld works as a radio personality and digital manager for River Radio in Cape Girardeau. I think I said that right. He hosts the Iceburg in the Morning show on Real Rock 99.3 and covers 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. weekdays and on 93.9 Mike FM. He also has hosted a twice weekly Facebook Live morning podcast, as well as hosting Humans in Tune podcast segments for Mike FM. Off the air, Darren is a musician performing as a trombone for Shades of Soul. I love that name locally. And a strong community advocate serving on the board for United Way of Southeast Missouri and Levi's Children's Charity, Levi's Adventure Trail. He lives and works in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and is married to Carrie, the true professional of the relationship. Darren has two kids, Layla and Lawson, who he personally guarantees are better than any other kids you've met. How are you doing today? I love that. Better than any other kids you've met.
That's right. I'm confident in that. Yeah. I'm doing great, Pearl. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
For those that are listening, I got to be on your show. I had so much fun. I'm like, oh my God, you have to come on. We got to have some more fun together.
Yeah,
so I'm so
awesome.
excited. So tell everybody a little bit. I know we've read your bio, but tell everybody a little bit about you and what led you on this journey to do what you're doing today.
Man, boy, that's a loaded question. So, so my bio is I'm 49. No one ever guesses I'm going to be 50 this year because I stay youthful and very busy. And kind of, I wouldn't say I got a late start in life. I just have had a lot of restarts. You know, if you think of Ross moving the couch down the stairs and yelling pivot, that's kind of been the story of my existence to a certain T. I have been a tour manager and worked in the music industry and loved that job and realized that and family don't mix well. So pivoted to a digital position where I've always been kind of a computer geek. Ever since they came out, I was kind of into it and just kind of grew up with that, but more on the creative side than the programming side. So I've always had an inkling for what can I do where I can use my nerdy technology side to do something creative and, wherever that might take me. And so that's taken me to do everything from, concert posters to, podcasts and everything in between. And it's really just been part of my journey along with the creative side of things. And I've been fortunate enough to, I've worked in corporate environments and everything else, but being able to work in the creative industry is probably the one thing that has saved me mentally and just emotionally, because I need that creative outlet. I don't work well in a cubicle. And but basically I have more or less lived in Southeast Missouri here my entire life. I've traveled a lot. I lived in Dallas, Texas for several years. While I was kind of in that tour time of my life and traveled a ton during that time. So I've gotten to see a lot of places and have a lot of adventures. I have been, my family, my kids are 15. My son is 12. My daughter's 15. My son is 12. They're great kids. They're both, busy kids as well. And we live that lifestyle where my wife and I are balancing the tournament trips and this and that. But, I think as far as my story goes, it's just always been I've wanted to help. I've wanted to infuse people with creative energy and kind of motivate people to find their creative side and dive more in on that. I think that for me is kind of a pleasing thing. We mentioned when you were with me on my show that, kind of fixers. I want to see people succeed, but I want to also prop them up to help them succeed. And that's one of my hardest things, is to stay back, let people learn and overcome on their own and just help coach them through it. So that's something I've kind of been working on too.
I totally get that. So I'm going to go back to about the fixer in a second.
Yeah, because that was all over the place.
You were all over the place. I wrote you creative. Like that's you. Like you create. That's like your big word. Like for you, it being creative. And
absolutely.
I can imagine I was talking about somebody earlier on another show where we evolve, like our journey changes as things in our life changes, like I was talking to her, she was doing a show that was about moms and now she's in her 40s. So now it's like, moms over 40, and how that evolves and changes. And like you said, you're on the road and that just didn't, do well for a family environment.
Right.
But I love how, so when you said it made me feel like young again,
Yeah.
halfway. When you talked about when computers came out, I remember them when they came out. Like when
Oh
you
yeah.
said that, I was like, oh my God, I remember they first came out. We were talking the other day about the
Yep.
first cell phone in your car that had the long cord still in the
Oh
car.
yeah. And this is how nostalgic I get. My first computer was a Texas Instruments TI 99 4A that my parents got me. I learned to program BASIC. It had a voice modulator, so I could talk to you like this and sound really scary. But it was so much fun. And I picked one up a couple of years ago with like all the toys I had when I had mine, so I could get that little piece of nostalgia. But yeah,
It's so much fun to look back. And, for those that are listening to us that, you're like, what kind of computer was that? Then you're probably too young for my show. But
yeah,
it's
we
so
used
much.
them in school, so it worked out well. I'd use
Right.
it at
Yeah,
home and school.
exactly.
So.
So tell us about, let's talk about that people pleaser and that fixer. That's something that many people struggle with, is like overcoming people pleasing. And we want it, even like you have kids, like your kids are 12 and 15, you were sharing, like even wanting it for our kids. And we feel like we want to kind of come in and let me fix it and give it to them all done. Right. But sometimes we have to learn to step back and be like, they got to fall, they got to fail, they got to scrape their knees, they got to get a concussion, right? So as much as that hurts to watch. So walk us through that, like for those that are listening, how you have taught yourself mentally to try to let them do that falling. And what would be some advice to those that are listening on how to do that?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it was almost an evolution to come to that point because I would find myself relying on my parents. I always had a parachute. Darren always had a way out when I'd screw something up in college or do something dumb when I lived in an apartment. There was always some kind of outlet. So somebody was always fixing for me. And so I realized when I was on my own, that you can't rely on those people necessarily all the time. And you really have to come to a maturity level where you're taking care of your own things, and you're accepting responsibility for your own screw ups. And that was, I think, a big kind of light bulb for me. And it sounds like, well, duh, yeah, you own up to your screw ups, you learn a lot, but you really do. And it was kind of a culmination of my first marriage and realizing how much I had changed who I was to accommodate the other side of that relationship. And there was some of that reciprocating as well. But it was just one of those points where I think, and it was even before I had kids where I realized I need to step back. I think it was sort of a bridge between kind of a coming of age with my faith and having conversations about that side of it, because I immediately, I don't know, I guess I felt guilt for years of not doing more volunteering, whatever it might have been. I wanted to just do everything I could, and I'd meet somebody. Oh, gosh, that's a terrible story. What can we do? Let's get you some money. Let's get you some food. Let's get you here and that. And that's all well and good, but nobody learns anything along that route, right? It's the give a man a fish, teach a man to fish kind of thing. And so I think that was part of it for me, was hearing, I guess the affirmation that somebody would give when they were the ones that had the realization that there was that issue, overcame it, found a solution, came to that solution, and were successful because of that. Seeing that felt so much better to me than my efforts and my time and heart I was pouring into trying to fix that for them. And so it was kind of a double dip for me. It was like, okay, I can help people succeed by backing off, and I can also free up a lot of my own emotional energy and just time spent in a day if I don't try to assume all those responsibilities. And so,
and I think that's a good point too. I think that's a great point, that when you realize that you take that step back, mentally you give yourself more energy because you're not like worrying about, oh, are they doing what I said they should do to fix it? Did they go call that person? Did they go apply for that job? Did they go to that food bank? You can give them the resources. It's like you said, my grandfather used to say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? You can give them all those resources, but they have to figure out. And a great example is I had the privilege of going to a summit here in Tampa this past weekend, and there was a keynote speaker on there talking about her journey and how she always had an adult along the way to help her navigate everything, right? So when she goes and she gets out to the real world, of working world, unfortunately, she signed a contract for something that has made her lose her entire name, her birth name she can never use right now. She's in litigation because when she signed this contract, she trusted the adults, right? Because she's trusted adults all along. So when we fix for others, they can't, like you said, they can't learn. So then here she is, she's out now, she's in litigation, hoping to get her name back, hoping to be able to do some of the things she was doing with this company. And so we have to be able to allow that growth. For somebody needs to be able to grow, and when we don't, we stifle them. They don't know how to handle an emotion that comes up. They don't know how to communicate their realistic expectations to somebody
These are virgin experiences every time they hit one of these walls. And if you haven't given them that preparation, it's setting them up for failure.
It's so true. So let's talk about like your traveling, like how, how young were you when you were doing that?
So that was it was kind of a big chapter, I guess, if I were to write it as a book. And in 2004, I had separated from my first wife. We'd been together for about 10 years, been married for 5, and we got separated. I had several months of just not any interest in that. Had met the woman who's my current wife, and we had just started dating in about February of 2005. And then about a month after we started dating, another friend of mine who'd I'd known for, 15, 20 years from earlier, came to me and said, "Hey, I know I didn't like my job. I was working for the cable company at the time. I was just more or less working." And he said, "I know that you're, going through a lot of changes. I got an opportunity. I've been working for this company since last fall. They do entertainment, band shows. They do it all over the world. And they're looking for somebody to come work for them. The stitch is you're going to have to move to Dallas." And as a guy who's very, very deeply rooted in my family, and we farm, we raise cattle together. It was a lot of things in life. So that was going to be a big thing, to move that far away. But I realized that, I think God had guided me. Things had guided me, and that was the serendipitous moment where it was, "Hey, dude, this opportunity's falling in your lap. You're going to go meet with these people. If they hire you, you got a great opportunity. And if things work out one way, if not, it's a learning experience." So to me, it was kind of I think it was my putting on my big boy pants for the first time, because I really had, to that point, not lived outside of, the nest. And so I jumped in with both feet and moved into an apartment sight unseen. Thank God that turned out to be a good place to live. But yeah, and then just from there on out, it was immediately just hitting the road. And I was all over cities in the U.S. and, fly in, have some meetings, run some shows all weekend, bail back out, and head to the next city. So it was me and my backpack and my passport, and we were just rolling, and I loved it. And my wife, she's my wife now, my girlfriend at the time, she was still here. She finished up college, then moved down there and took a job. And so we were there together for the majority, for about 2/3 of the time of my time in Texas.
So how would you say, I mean, that's a big jump, to leave, like you said, to leave family, leave all this, what you've known as home all your life, and to go somewhere as like a big city like Dallas, and then go do all this traveling. How would you say that that's shaped you today?
It definitely, if there was any shell left here, broke it. That was gone. That was gone and done. I found myself absolutely just enamored with my ability to go into a city and be anonymous. Having grown up where, everybody knows your name or everybody knows your face when you walk into the store and that kind of thing. And those things are all great. I'm not dissing any of that. But to fly to Minneapolis and, run shows, nobody knows me. I could have spoke with an English accent all weekend. Nobody known any different, So it wasn't, I wasn't able to reinvent myself, but I was able to just genuinely be Darren without having to put on a conservative face for these sort of people, or whatever the case might have been. I could just be myself. And it really, to me, taught me that express yourself, be louder than the rest of the room when you need to be. Be big, be bold, love big. And, and that was, I've always based everything I've ever done has been based on love. And even in the touring thing, when some band in San Antonio would drive me up the wall, it was still done in love, and we'd have the conversation. We'd laugh it out. We'd work through it, So I think it taught me to love a lot more people than what I thought I would growing up in the Midwest. And it really just, it opened me up. It opened me a lot.
And I can see that. I mean, I mean, when I interviewed with you, that was one thing. I'm like, I just felt so comfortable. And I felt that energy through what we're doing here on Zoom, I felt that.
Yeah.
And, I love what you said, like love big and be bold, because sometimes we don't, sometimes we kind of sit behind the expectations, or we sit behind the title, or we sit behind, like you said, my parents moved to California to a small town called Banning Beaumont about a year after I got to high school. And I was like, what the heck? Why not? But everybody knew everybody. I'm like, oh, I don't know that I like this, because I came from a big city. So it was quite different. But to be able to go out and then kind of like you said, like nobody know your name. That I love that, that whole song kind of relevance. But to go out there and just be like, I'm going to try to be bigger than what I've been. And it's not going to, I don't need to worry about, not that you were worried about it, but, sometimes when we're in that small town
but you do,
feel,
you're trepidatious about being that guy or that person in the room. But that's like, and part of it was my job. It was my job to go up on stage and say, hey, these bands are here. And I know, who the hell I am, but we're going to rock out tonight, or whatever the case might be,
Yeah. And I'm telling, it's probably millions of people at sometimes too. And sometimes that would freak people out, but to walk in and be like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be bold about it. So what was really, go ahead, Tom.
It opened that up for me as far as stage presence goes. Like I'd been in bands in college. We played out, in cities and stuff, and you do what you need to do while you're on stage, but beyond just a stage, just to have conversations with people in the airport. I mean, if there's anything I'm sad about that I won't be able to do before I die, it's because there's so many places I've never stepped my foot into and so many people I've never had a conversation with. Yeah. I just won't get the time. So
well, it's never too late. So make that. But I heard, I think it was Steve Harvey said, make a list of 300 things you want in your life. Do it today. And next year, when the year rolls around, see how many things came off that list, like without even knowing you accomplished it, right? So put those people on your list. Like I've given, my PR person, and Brooke, I've given her my list. I'm like, okay, these are my bucket list. If you get
help me check things off, right?
Help me get them off. But I love that. So now, you're in Dallas. How you go back home? What was that like? What led you back home? I know you said it wasn't conducive for family, but talk about that, how that decision came about, and then how, what led you to do what you're doing today?
So I'd been in Dallas, been doing the touring thing for a little while. The company was run actually originally in Europe, and it still remains in Europe. They stuck their foot in the U.S. First year went well. Second year, when I jumped on, went exceptionally well. Third year went really well. And then the wheels kind of fell out because the market in the U.S. is much more saturated than the European market. So it was a little tougher to keep the wheels on. So it was kind of a culmination of, I was very worried because I hadn't made any money in like 6 months because the way things were running. It was 2007. So we were also starting to get a little funky economy side of things. And so I went job hunting there in Dallas, and mainly just because, again, we had rent to pay, and it's not all on her to make sure the check doesn't bounce. And so I found a job as a copywriter for a burgeoning online shoe company. And so while I was still trying to keep the tour thing going, I was also writing marketing copy for shoes. And again, that's that creative side, right? So the music thing was starting to fizzle out. There's my outlet going away. Oh no, what's going? And I found myself in the position with a really awesome boss who said, you have carte blanche to write anything you want to about these shoes. Obviously, the facts need to be stated. But so I was writing stories about, this is a caveman's favorite shoe because the extra width, blah, 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 blah. And that gave me a great creative outlet. And so I jumped on with that right about the time the touring stuff was starting to fade out. And I hadn't really made a decision to move home. I had, it's about a 9-hour trip if you're gunning it to get from Dallas back to Southeast Missouri. And I'd been home, sporadically over my time in Texas, just to, as the kids say, touch grass, get back out to the farm, obviously to come home and see mom and dad and my family and catch up. But it was when we had my daughter that we made the decision to move home. And without going into her whole ninja baby story, because she was unexpected, and then she was extremely unexpected because we went from a typical 7.5, 8 month window to about a 6-week window because we had no clue she was that far along. So she showed up. My in-laws came and visited. My parents came and visited, and then a couple weeks after that, it was both sides of the family going, oh, and we came and visited, and then it was, oh boy, it sure seems like you were with them more than us. And you were, And we realized really quickly it would be much easier to live in Southeast Missouri and visit those friends in Texas. And so that's what we decided to do. It was an easy decision. I still owned my house here. I'd just been renting it out. My renters were actually looking to move out and buy their own place. So again, that serendipity sunk in and said, Darren, now's the time to get home. So we loaded up like the Beverly Hillbillies and we made our way north. And, we've looked back. We miss a lot of things down there. But by and far, it was an incredibly good decision to make. The support structure when you move back close to the nest, especially when you got little ones, couldn't do it without them. Still couldn't do it without them.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. So my husband and I,
Mhm.
we've been on our own we'll be together 40 years this year. And we've been on our own with our two boys, like pretty much the whole time because
Wow.
I grew up in a military life, but with his job, we were in Virginia. We went from California to Virginia, now here to Florida. And my family's like all over. I mean, his is New York and then California. So it's very,
Mhm.
hard to get together with everybody. And so, yeah, if I had the opportunity, like I'll tell you one time we were still living in California. We didn't have kids yet. And we had a horrible earthquake. And I said, I'll go to Buffalo. And my husband's like, I am not going back to Buffalo ever again. I don't care what earthquake it is. He's like, we're not
Yep.
going there again. But I get
Too
what you were
cold.
saying about, yeah, cold. And yeah, and there's nothing really, I love my family in Niagara Falls and everything, but even they will admit there's not a lot to do there, So, and then
Yeah.
it's cold. But I remember, what you said. It's so funny you talked about the family going, well, you spend more time here and there.
Mhm.
We did the same thing. Like we would
Yeah.
go home to visit California from Virginia. And my mom would be like, you're with so-and-so more. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm
Yeah.
like,
And they don't do it to spite the other side. It's not a
Right.
battle. It's just they're selfishly wanting grandbaby time.
Exactly.
Or, I'd hope they'd want to hang with me too, but
yeah, right. Yeah, they
take
want,
what
yeah.
you can get. Yeah.
They want those kids. So, so what led you to what you're doing today? Because
Mhm.
you have the Mike FM show, and so
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
us about that. So you come back, you leave that world in Texas. Now you're back home. You're getting settled in, and
Mhm.
then the next step happens.
Yeah. So we made the decision to move home, and I made that decision because the aforementioned footwear company that I was writing for, when we found out we were pregnant, and again, I've been very blessed to have some wonderful work families. This was like my number 2 favorite work family I've ever had in my life. And we had a great time getting things going. Oh, we're so happy for you guys. We had the baby at the end of August. Hooray. Yay, yay, yay. And I'm realizing, oh my gosh, we don't know anyone who can babysit. Hey, boss, can I work from home since all I'm doing is, riding my scooter in and writing copy anyway? Sure, we can try that. So we did that. And then a few months later, after that was being successfully done, I said, hey, can I continue to work from home, but just like 600 miles away? And after conversation, we made that work. And so I knew moving back, I still had a job. I was going to be able to work remotely, and be able to keep that hybrid lifestyle of being the lucky dad who gets to raise his daughter. And I did up until she was about 3. And then the footwear company got sold and they eliminated most of the staff at that point. So I lost that job. And this was one of those backside of the divorce. Well, what do I do now? How am I going to evolve from this? How do I pivot? The couch was definitely stuck in the stairs at this moment. And I did a couple of odd job things to kind of just, again, keep the bills paid. And then in 2011, and it was about a week and a half after my son was born, I was on the job hunt, and really I had been for about 8 months at this point. And I put in an application with a digital firm here in town. So digital marketing and web design and all that stuff. And long story short, they hired me, and that's where I worked for 8 years. And that job was my number 1 favorite work family I've ever had. I had an incredible boss who invested in me, who fostered leadership in me, who helped me to mature in my leadership role immensely. I had the skills, I just didn't know, and I didn't know how to use them. I had great conversations with clients, and, and he saw that. And so he was able to take that and help me build on my own and build my confidence to do it. And so that just grew, and I would still be there had they not sold that company. But he made a deal, and it was great for him, and I was very happy for him. But it was like one of the end of those 80s movies where they're like, and then Johnny went on to marry her. He became governor. Tommy spent 6 years in prison, but ended up opening a sandwich shop next to Harvard. You know, like all the little epilogues from everyone in the movie. So it's kind of like that. We all from the company went our own ways. I had actually been here to the radio station on a leadership event where they were touring media about a month prior to me applying. And it was, I came in here about a week later. I found out the company was being sold. And again, the benefits of the small town is I knew a lot of the people here. And radio was one of my first jobs. I started in radio when I was still in high school and just did it till a point where immature Darren got burned out because he thought he could make more money doing something else. Surprise, surprise. And so I sent him a message. I said, "Hey, you guys hiring?" And it was, again, a moment of serendipity. One of the long-standing morning show hosts here in Cape Girardeau on our flagship station, he was retiring. So there was some shifting going on, and I was able to slide in. I actually worked here for a week before I even met our GM. So it was kind of a cool deal. I didn't have a big learning curve, and I love to talk. So that part was easy. And being a tech geek, it was easy to slide in on this little nugget you see over here. That's our programming computer. So I picked it up really easily. Within a couple of years, I had the digital manager role on top of that, and just continued to grow it. But where I've landed, I'm super happy. I love this job. It has its frustrations just like everything else. And there are times here where I find myself having to go, okay, stop being a fixer and let's be a teacher. Let's be a motivator. Let's be an observer. And this week has been a test of that. So this is kind of good timing on this conversation because it definitely has been. But that's kind of what landed me here. And it's cool because, my son loves it. And hey, my dad's on the radio and he's got his little dude voice and hey, this is Lawson, and, and I try to be a good person in the community, a good pillar, if you want to use that old school term. But, that's what we shoot for. I'm blessed to have stations that are very community minded. And I found a happy place here. I still have so many things I want to do. Like I said, a zillion people I want to talk to and places to see, but, and maximizing all my digital stuff I do, but there's only so many hours in a day. But I think that's my goal now as I continue to evolve who I am is maximizing what I can do with my time and learning to better say no and learning to realize what's valuable and what's not.
I love, I'm going to go back for a second, what you said about, the previous boss that you had and how he saw the leadership and how he fostered the leadership about, having those balcony people around that see, this potential in you and then they want to help, right? They don't want to fix, they want to guide you back again to what we're talking about, like letting go, leading, I think that's so powerful. I have, I'm sure I know he listens to me, but Jim, I used to call him my boss. He's like, I'm not your boss. We're part of a team. When I did mortgages in Virginia, and I remember, I was about 8 months pregnant. I was a processor for my loan officers. I had like 4 loan officers at the time, and I was going away to, I think I was 7.5 months pregnant, and we were going to Buffalo for a baby shower for the family. And so when I left, one of my loan officers had quit. One was in jeopardy of losing his job. So I knew coming back, I would have 2 to 3 loan officers maybe, right? Well, I go away, come back on that Monday, and he had always been trying to push me to go be a loan officer. I was like, I don't want to do sales. I don't want to do that, And so I come back and my one loan officer quit. One got let go. So I had 2, and there was a processor that needed more. They didn't want to let her go. She could handle more cases. So I go in, I'm like, 7.5, 8 months pregnant. He's like, all right, Pearl, you're going to go be a loan officer at the number 1 office that we had. Right. And I'm like going, oh,
no pressure.
I'm like, Macklin, I'm like 8 months pregnant. I'm going to walk in here. I'm going to be out having a baby. He goes, even more reason why they're going to be a bunch of grandmothers for you. And da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God.
Think of all the free sitting.
So he literally like pushed me out to that leadership role. And, I look back and he's the reason why, like, I worked for another company. It was a telecom company. And I had a boss that you need to go take Dale Carnegie. And I'm like, when I took the course, I'm like, why isn't she taking it? Finding out later she took it twice and it didn't work for her. But between that and him, I learned to be, more outgoing and speak
Hmm.
more up, and some of the things you're talking about, we're talking about here. But when I look back at, and I know he's listening, we call him Macklin. When I look back at the things he taught me, I'm so thankful because he saw that leadership in me and he pushed me out. I turned our office into we should have been number one. I turned our office into the number one office for the realtors. It was funny because I had this little tiny space like what you're sitting in, probably a little smaller, and it would come around the corner and they're like, "Oh, you're still here?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I had processed for the guy. I had processed for the guy I took over for, right? And I could never get him on the phone. And they'd come back around. And they're like, "You're still here?" So after 3 days of this, I'm like, "Could you guys please tell me why you keep asking? Are you worried I'm going to quit? Like, I'm not going
Right.
anywhere. I got a
What
mouth
is
to
this
feed."
work ethic you're
Right,
displaying? We've not
right.
seen this before.
And they're like, "Well, every time he came, so and so he was off golfing or fishing." I'm like, "Well, listen, I don't know how to golf and I don't like fishing anymore as a girl. It was great when I was a little girl, but I don't want to do it anymore. So
Yeah.
that leadership, like to know that. So, and I like how you tied it back now to what you're doing today, but you mentioned your son, right?
Hmm.
And him, seeing and think it's cool that, hey, my dad's on the radio. So
Yeah.
I heard, you're creating a leader in him too. You're creating that
Oh,
again
my
back to
kids
the
are so far
creativity.
ahead of where I was. I have made certain of that because I was that, and as extroverted as I appear now, I was that kid that in seventh grade band camp, I feigned illness so I didn't have to go to the camp dance. I hated social situations. Ugh, hated them. Now just throw me to the wolves. I'm into it. But I don't know. With my household, our ground rule is common sense prevails. And my kids are intelligent. I am very lucky to have the kids that I do. I really am because I got friends with teenagers that I would throw them out on the side of the road and say, well, get a job and get to walking, you know, but I am very blessed. And both of my kids understand that they have big hearts and love permeates everything we do. Even when we argue, it's love that's inside that. You know what I mean? And so, but it goes beyond just the love that's in our nest. Let's build our walls and keep anybody from getting in. No. It's about loving everybody you come in contact with, and taking care and being wary. And again, common sense prevails.
I love
That's
that
a certain.
I love you're doing that with your kids and teaching the kids. It's so important. We talk about that here on the show a lot about being the example. Our kid, I saw somebody sent it to me. I think it was on Facebook last night. It was this little video clip, and I don't even know where it was, but came across. It was like this mom. She walks in and she's putting something in the laundry. She's like, "I'm so fat." Then she walks in somewhere. She's got to clean up. "I'm so sloppy. Like, I'm so this, I'm so that." And it showed the little girl sitting in her room playing with the stuffed animal, going, "I'm going to bring you to school with me tomorrow, but I'm so fat." I'm so like that.
Uh-huh.
What they hear us say, they do. And
Yep.
I love that you're that example for your kids. And I want to talk about the things you're doing because we talk about self care, and self care is also about what we're talking about, how you can let somebody grow. We don't have to be the fixer, but it's also about doing for others the things that we love to do, right? And I know you
Mm-hmm.
do quite a
Yeah.
bit for charity, and we talked about that in your bio. So tell us about. I would love to know about Levi's Children's Charity.
Yeah. So, and that's been a cool journey of love, um and it's kind of good timing given the time of year that we're in. So Levi's Children's Charity is basically the charity that encompasses something called Levi's Adventure Trail. Levi's Adventure Trail is a park here locally, a big park. It's got some amazing stuff in it. We've got interactive, again, the digital geek. We've got interactive exhibits, all kinds of cool things. So the backstory to this is, and its inception and so forth, I had nothing to do with. I came into it because my wife and I had just started going. This was shortly after my son was born. It was about 2012, so he may have been about a year old. We'd started going to a new church in town, and his first birthday was coming up in July. And I was like, I don't know. We don't need anything. God, we had so much stuff left over for my daughter, anyway, baby stuff, and they grow like crazy monkeys anyway. So, just we don't need stuff. Why don't you guys donate money and we'll give it to a charity? And my wife suggested she had seen something at church about this Levi's Adventure Trail thing. And so I said, that sounds great. So we had the birthday party. I don't know. We had like $160 or something, and we donated it to him. And when we donated it to him, we didn't know the people from Adam. And I just said, if there's anything else we can do to help out, this is Darren's fault. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know. And they did. They did reach out. They said, well, we heard you work for a website company. Like, yeah. Well, we need to get a website built for this adventure trail. So it was all in the planning stages at this time to create the park. The reason for all of this coming to light is because the family had lost their son. It was an SUDC, sudden unexplained death in children. They still don't know what took him, but he had laid down for a nap. His dad went in to check on him. He wasn't breathing. They had him, and this would have been on St. Patrick's night. They had him in the ICU in St. Louis. And after 8 hours of trying everything they could, they had to let him go. And I don't even begin to imagine what that's like. I can't. I don't want to. But Levi, the boy that passed, he was about 2 weeks younger than what my daughter was. So I had all this wonderful, dad time, and he was 2.5 and he passed away. And I looked at my daughter. I'm like, there's no reason on earth that couldn't have been my kid, and that really just got me. And so I helped him build a website. And next thing I knew, Levi's grandma was cooking me food and Levi's mom was giving me bourbon. And God, I love the fact they gave me bourbon, but they're amazing people. And they were bound and determined to create this legacy for their child. And so I did everything I could to help. And we built them a website. We did fundraising. They adopted me. And, I came into the fold with them. But because of the love that they showed and the passion they had for the project, that drew me in with them. And I share that with them now. I never met Levi. I didn't have that part of my life. But I know Levi's brother. They have another son now and an older sister that was around when Levi passed, and she was young as well. So it was a difficult thing. And now, stories and miles later, in 2017, we opened the park officially, and we've added to it since then. And we're in the midst of evolution to create more things at the park. We've had an incredible partnership with the county park department to create that. And it's awesome. And so onward, we are fundraising for another park to be built in another town here locally to kind of continue that legacy. And it's really about continuing that legacy. So for me, it was, anything I've ever done for them has been a labor of love, and because I can go out there today and there'll be 60 kids out there just losing their mind, having the best time in the world. And that happens daily, 360 days out of the year, and it makes me so happy to know that something built for a kid that I never knew from a family that didn't know me at all has created so much love in our community, So that's why that's a huge part for me. And now, because the park is built, we do some fundraising, we have some conversations. I keep the website and so forth up to date, and we just keep moving forward with it. But it's also something that is a family project. I mean, my wife was as involved as I was with it, and my kids have grown up playing over there, test drove the equipment when we first put it in. So
I love that. Yeah. I think so. Tell everybody, we'll put it in the show notes, but tell everybody how they can find the foundation.
So the easiest way to go is just levisadventuretrail.com. You can hit the website and you can read about the playground there. I'm getting ready to do some big updates for that that satellite playground that we're wanting to build, that we're fundraising for right now too. So that's a good spot to catch that one.
I love that they chose to do something for their son. And you're right. I mean, some of my story is, we lost our son at 18 months ago at 25. And our legacy that we're doing with him is because, it's, you're right. The hardest thing ever is to lose a child. And I have another son, and just recently he's had some health stuff going on. And I'm like, that from the outside, you want to be like that strong mama, but on the inside, you're going, okay, God, let's
and what might be that tiny little thing for somebody else, for you, because of context. Oh no.
Right.
That's a big flex. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And so what we're doing is, our older son, Matt, he was born of our heart. So if you're listening and you have adopted a child of a different culture, one of the things that Matt he saw me start writing books and start doing that process. And he's like, Mom, we should do a book about raising children of a different culture, because he was the only mixed race child in our family, which is all white, and his biological family. The only tie to mixed race was his biological dad, which he never knew. So he's like, yeah, it was very pivotal for him. And then he's like, we should do a story about the challenges of it and things that people should look at when they're thinking about, or if they have adopted, help them through that journey. And we had started talking about that. So after he passed, I'm like, we need to do this. We really need to do this. We have 10 authors so far. He passed at 25 on the 25th of the month. So our goal is to have 25 authors, and we're hoping to launch it July 25th, but it might not be till Christmas, which is the 25th, which is great
When
too.
it happens, it
right?
will happen.
It's supposed to
it'll
happen.
right?
Exactly. So to have that legacy and to leave that on, I think it's so awesome that you're doing that for them. And I love that even you didn't even know him, but because you saw that beautiful thing that can come out of that tragedy is something that you're giving back. And I think it's important that we as humans find something that brings us joy, that not just for ourselves, but that can help and pay forward for somebody else. And that's to me, that's also part of self-care. That's that part.
Well, you have to be aware of what gifts and talents you have, do an internal inventory to know what skills you have. One thing about me is I'm always learning, and it is such a thing for me and has been for eons. I'll put that on my mom. She was an English teacher. I was always reading books. I was always learning new stuff. I mentioned, getting into computers at a young age, kind of in that hybrid generation where we learned typewriting in high school and then we were programming computers in college. So it was a weird coming of age for us. But, for me, I started using Photoshop and Adobe products like way early. And so that's been something that's been a tool for me. So I can help you create a really nice looking flyer or poster or do this or do that. And, and the things that I have to offer, I want my kids to know early on what gifts you have, what things you want to pursue. What are your fruits of the spirit, that come to you? What's your love language? Like, I want you to figure those things out early, not so you can only focus on those, but so those are strengths. So when something doesn't fit right, you can fall back to those strengths and still, overcome or still, drive around the rock in the road, so to speak. So I think it's important to have an inventory kind of always running of what your skill sets are, what your talents are, what you can do. I'm a collector of skills, I guess. Jack of all trades, master of none, so to speak. But I don't know, for my life, it's akin to Tarzan swinging through the jungle, probably more George of the Jungle swinging through the jungle with my skill sets. But from early on and all the way through, anytime I thought, holy crap, I'm going to fall and hit the floor, there's another vine. There's a mentor. There's an opportunity. There's that serendipity. There's that thing to grab onto and swing into the next chapter. And next thing you know, you're getting kind of in a rhythm. You're learning what you can swing on and what you can use to get where you need to go. And if I didn't have those vines in my life, I would probably be in a lot of different places. We all look back and regret at our youth, probably unquestionably so. Just if for no other reason, even if we were the most pious child ever, damn, I wasted a lot of time. But when I look back at mine, I have regrets over certain things. Sure, everybody does, but I would never change a single thing because it's all led me to where I'm at today. It's given me the colorful coat that I've been able to wear from all the fun stuff I've been able to do. And I'm not done yet, but that's rounded me. If I started out as a rough chunk of carbon, I've ended up polished to a diamond because of those people and those opportunities and those moments in life. And that's given me, I feel like, a lot of knowledge. I still have so many things to learn, but something that when I impart things onto my kids, I am brutally honest about things, constructive criticism, so forth. But we're very honest in our house. My dad says, if you tell the truth on Monday, you don't have to remember your BS on Friday. Right. So that's our phrase. You tell the truth. It's just, that's the end of it. Plus my kids know I'll find out any lies they make. So.
What I think is really cool is you talk about the vine, those vines, because vines are so important. And what I love, and, for our parents that are listening, you reminded me of something I've shared on here before, but what I love is that you're helping your kids to see what their love language is. And we need to do that for we need to teach our young adults and our young kids that love language.
It's so hard to communicate when you're a teenager anyway.
Right.
Yeah. They're still figuring it out for sure.
Right. And one of the things that I do, it's called positive intelligence. And they're finding that using this with our young kids, it's so important because it teaches them how to, sage those negative thoughts, but then also how to learn to communicate their feelings as well, And so like if that bully walks up, they could be like, hey, those shorts look pretty cool on you. And it kind of throws the bully off, things things to do that.
Flipping it up.
Yeah, but what I love too is that you're teaching your kids to learn what their love language is. It reminds me of a friend, and I've talked about this too before, where he had created a table and he started when his kids were infants, and as he got, I think he had two boys, but as a every time, and he went with each individual child, and he'd sit at the table, and he's like, people would look at me like I was crazy when I was talking about my 0 to 2 year old, right? But
Mm-hmm.
what he created was a safe space for his kids to understand this is your conversation table. Whatever you
Yeah.
need to tell me, good, bad, or indifferent, you can tell me. And he's
Mm.
like, and because I saw him a couple of times, like, what are you doing? And he taught me that it's never too late. So even if your kids are 16 or even 25 years old, it's never too late to start creating a
Yeah.
spot where they can have a safe conversation. And I
Yep.
mean, I used to do we talk about self-care being, we think it's selfish, but you can do it with your kids. I used to go take my older son Matt. He had horrible football feet, and we would go do mani-pedis, and my nail tech, she would laugh because we would have conversations around girls, around
Yeah.
sex, wearing a
But you
coat.
created that
Yeah,
comfort
we
zone, safe
right.
place.
And so it's so important that we do that for our kids, especially in this day and age with, we talk about social media. I'm on a board for a nonprofit called Unsilenced Voices, where we bring awareness to human trafficking and then the domestic violence. And we have to start having that conversation young, because our kids are
Yeah.
looking at the phones all the time, or they're on
Oh,
social media. And
yep.
so creating that space, I know there's a big talk right now here in Florida about, and I don't think he signed it, where there was a bill going to our governor's desk about saying that kids under a certain age can't be on social media. And people
Right.
are like in an uproar about that. I think we need parameters and everything, but as
Yeah.
parents, we need to be aware of what our kids are doing. I think it
Yes.
was our favorite sheriff in our state, Grady Judd, where he talks about it's your responsibility to know what's happening in the door. They're not
Yes.
adults yet, so you make the rules. I'm like, gosh, he just is so right,
Like, look at all that common sense.
I
It's
know.
amazing. Yeah. And my kids know, like, we have Google Family on the phones. I can track them wherever they're at. If I want to shut off things, I can shut off things. I don't need to, because my kids understand that, they have to respect the parameters that we lay out. We're all working together. We're all in the same roof. If we're fighting all the time, we're unproductive. So, just again, common sense prevails. You just hope for the best. Kids are tough. Teenagers like to lie. I mean, that's part of life. I think and we could all say this again, when we look as our kids get older and they get to certain ages, you really start to reflect on I really gave my parents a lot of crap. And things that and again, my daughter is my child. She's my emotional girl. She's the one that if she got mad enough, she'd probably go try to punch a hole through a fence post. But, so those are the things that I'm like, I recognize that, and I know where she's getting to now. So I'm going to balance that out with my behavior instead of continually having an arms race of who can scream the loudest. So, and it keeps us close.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, Being
And I
honest with each other is one of the easiest way to have unconditional love.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that you recognize that in your daughter, and it's true. Like, they emulate us. Like, my husband was raised by his stepdad. His biological dad died the day before he was born of leukemia. So his
Mm.
stepdad raised him, I think, around 3 years old, and it's so crazy. And even my son, who he had as an infant, to watch what you emulate those people you are
Mm-hmm.
around, right? And I mean, like,
Yes.
even today, my husband will fall asleep on his chair, and I'm like, there you go again. You're acting like your father. Fall asleep on the chair. I'll see you in a few hours. Those kind of things, and
Yeah.
and it's so true how they emulate the things they see in us, which is why it's so important that we are that example of what we want
Yeah.
them to become, because we want them to even become better than we are. That we want them to have even more than
Yeah.
what we've had, and maybe not have to learn. They have to do their own hard knocks, as we've talked here. We can't fix it for them,
No,
but
yeah.
help them fix the Band-Aid. Let's help you put the Band-Aid on and
Mhm.
give you some lessons over that. So I want to ask you, self-care. I would imagine your Shades of Soul band kind of helps pour into your self-care, right?
Yeah, that's a release point. Music for me has always been that, especially performing. And I've been lucky enough to perform in some really cool spots with some cool bands and so forth. And there's nothing, it's akin to that runner's high, right? When you get to be on a stage blowing your horn and there, 17,000 people in there, and you're only playing one song. You're just there as a horn guy. And then you get to go hang out and enjoy the rest of the day. that's a huge, awesome release and opportunity. I don't do it as much as I used to as far as playing out goes, but I say that when we've got 2 shows next month. So, but yeah, that's part of my self-care routine. Video gaming is a little bit as well. I geek out a little bit there, but um, I think I discovered when I was in Texas, my biggest self-care was just nature and just getting as close to God as I could. I mentioned, that we have a farm. I'm super busy, but when I get out to the farm and I can get out there amongst just the silence and just the absolute, again, it's that touch grass vibe. But when I was in Dallas and traveling so much, there were times that, I would drive straight through from Dallas back to here to visit family for a weekend. And the first thing I would do is just drive out to the woods and not even call anybody yet and let them know I was in town and just go sit in the woods, or just go sit up at the farm or something and just let that be. I don't have to do that as much anymore. I will say my self-care needs have gone down just because I really am lucky enough to be surrounded by some great people. I don't feel incredible stress. I don't feel, you get stressed for work, just for time consumption and so forth.
Right.
And lack of efficiency with coworkers. But
right.
Those things kind of bounce off. And having my wife, Carrie, and kids that don't test me every single day, I am very lucky to be where I'm at with that. But that music is a big part of self-care.
I call that having the right balcony people on the balcony for you, right? That helps pour into you and helps you feel, takes care of what's your inside, your soul, and what fills you as well.
And to have a wife that supports you and pours into you and says, yes, give that a shot. Yeah, do that. Let's give it a try, without overanalyzing or being hypercritical, or in some cases, spouses that say, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You're not capable of that. No, there's no way you're going to pull that. You know what I mean? If you're married to negativity, you need to work on things.
Right.
And possibly rethink things. But
that's
having a supportive
true.
spouse along the road, golly, I say it was a wife time ago when I did a lot of other things, but it really was. It was, before Carrie and I were an item, there was a lot of different things happening in my life. I was on different paths and different choices. And she improved me immensely.
Yeah. And I met my husband. I was only 19 when I met my husband. And I actually asked him to marry me. But, but we've been together for 40 years. And you're right. He's a huge supporter of mine. Like the other day, things I was having a challenge. He's like, I believe in you. So don't give up. It will work out. That's so important. All right. Yep. So we're getting near the end here. Tell everybody how they can reach out to you, how they can find you, how they can listen to you.
Sure. So to catch me on the radio, we're easy. We're digital. If you're not in the Southeast Missouri area, as radio is wanting to be FM. So you can hear the Rock Show in the mornings at 939 or at realrock993.com. I do 6 to 10 on air. Excuse me. And then from 10 to 2, I'm on 93.9 Mike FM, 939mikefm.com. Socials follow suit, Real Rock 993 on Facebook and Instagram, and 939 Mike FM on Facebook and Instagram as well. For Humans in Tune segments like the one that you and I had, they can find those on this station's Facebook page on the videos tab. For my morning show Facebooks, and they're not on the station page. When I started doing these, it was in the spring of 2020. So it was Captain COVID time. And I found myself with a lot of spare time. And I kind of got wrapped up in this group called Socially Distant Fest on Facebook. It's like, I don't know, a gazillion people are in this group, but there's a handful of amazing people from all over the country that perform music in there, have conversations. And so I kind of started just watching their shows. I missed music. I missed live music so much. And so getting to see them perform from their basements or their bathroom or their office or wherever it might be was a lot of fun. And then I kind of got encouraged to start, do a podcast thing or something like that. So I started doing the morning show, but I do it on my personal Facebook. So it's just facebook.com/Burgfeld, BURGFELD. And that's Monday and Friday from 7:30 to 8:30 Central. And so you can come hang out. It's a engaging show. It's really about engagement. I'm just we'll have some fun with some trivia and this and that. But we talk a lot in the comments and hang out, and we do it for an hour twice a week. So And that's been around now. We're on season 5 and 500 plus episodes later. The world is not much smarter for it. So, but
I don't
we've
know.
had a lot of fun along the way.
It's definitely had some more fun. That's for sure. I know I had a blast when I was on with you. All right. So now I've forewarned Darren that we're going to do these better questions, better life cards.
Yes.
I'm going to shuffle them. He's going to tell me when to stop and we're going to have him answer the cards. So here we go. You tell me when to stop.
Stop.
All right. So your question says, where are my choices leading me? Where are your choices leading you?
To Valhalla. No. My choices that I make today are leading me to hopefully a little better financial future, but to a place of assuredness in the next 10 years with where my kids will land. That's really a lot of my focus these days is, obviously work takes focus, but yeah, I go to work at 10 till 5 in the morning. I'm here between here and doing work at home in the basement office. That's most of my day. So I don't get to see my kids a lot. So the little windows I get to pour into them, my decisions are being poured into that to make sure their future's secured. They're my retirement plan, right? But in all sincerity, I want them to succeed, as all parents do. But I really do. I want them to succeed, and I want them to be mature enough to make the right decisions to succeed.
Yeah, we always want to. I remember buying my shirt, a shirt for my dad years ago. It said something about I'm living long enough to be a problem to my kids.
I need to get that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Living long enough to, to leave them a legacy, like what you're saying is so amazing. So I want to thank you so much for being on with me today. I just want to remind everybody that we're going to put all the links of everything we talked about. So the nonprofit as well. So please go check that out. But if you're looking for more, just go and watch and follow us on YouTube as well as like and subscribe. We on all the podcast platforms and of course 360 Talk Radio for Women. And so as I leave you today, I want to remind you that you are an amazing oyster. You're a little rough on the outside, but as you start opening up and working on yourself, you do find your inner pearl of greatness and you become that Shiro that you're meant to be. So go have a great day.